Sheriff Mark Warden is warning Marietta City Council and local parents about what his office is seeing when it comes to online crime targeting children. Warden said over the last year alone, his office has handled between 13 and 15 ICAC cases, which is internet crimes against children. Warden also said in some human trafficking related cases here, suspects often have strong ties to illegal drugs and are doing illegal activities to get money. Warden urges parents to pay close attention to who their kids are talking to on the internet.
Anytime when they're talking to somebody, just be careful, you know, and maybe ask your children every once in a while, hey, has anybody tried to do this? Or anybody ever asked you to do something that you wouldn't normally do? Has anybody asked you if your mom and dad's home?
Warden says different sheriff's offices and police departments usually take care of their own ICAC cases, but sometimes receive help from other departments.